Before Patton had his Shermans, and before America truly found its armored footing in World War II, there was the M3 Lee. The M3 Lee was a tank born out of urgency. In the early months of World War II, the United States had no battle-ready medium tank that could go toe-to-toe with German panzers. The M4 Sherman was still months away. So, American engineers rushed to design a stopgap, a tank that could carry a powerful 75mm gun and be built fast. But there was a problem. At the time, the US didn't yet have a turret design capable of holding a 75mm gun. So the designers made a compromise. They fixed the gun into the hull on the right-hand side. Then, they placed a smaller 37mm gun in a rotating turret above that. The result looked more like a battleship turret on tracks than a modern tank. British troops, desperate for armored support in North Africa, received it first. They dubbed it the Lee, after Confederate General Robert E. Lee. A slightly altered version, used by the British themselves, was called the Grant, named after Union General Ulysses S. Grant. History's little ironies, welded in steel. But the Lee's design had issues. It was tall, dangerously so, its silhouette made it easy to spot and hard to hide. And the sponson-mounted 75mm gun, fixed low in the hull, could only fire within a limited arc. To aim at anything outside that narrow zone, the entire tank had to turn. Yet for all its flaws, the M3 Lee had something early Shermans and Crusaders didn't, a cannon that could actually punch through German armor at long range. And in the scorching heat of North Africa, that mattered. By the middle of 1942, the M3 Lee was rolling into the North African desert. There, under a blistering sun and against the experienced German Afrika Korps, its real test began. For British crews, the arrival of the Lee was met with a mix of hope and hesitation. They'd suffered bitter losses in lighter tanks like the Crusader, which struggled to knock out German Panzer IIIs and IVs. The Lee 75mm gun changed that. In its first major engagement at Gazala, the M3 Lee proved that it could hit back hard. From long range, it could pierce through German armor, and it gave Allied forces something they hadn't had in a while: confidence. But that came at a price. Its high profile made it a magnet for enemy fire. German gunners quickly learned to spot the towering silhouette and go for the kill. And inside, crewmen were crammed into a noisy, overheated box. The sponson-mounted gun meant the gunner had no way to aim left or right without moving the entire tank, a death sentence in close combat. Communication between the multiple crew members, up to 7 in some models, was clumsy, especially under fire. Still, the Lee had resilience. Its riveted armor, while outdated, could sometimes hold together under punishment. Its gasoline engine roared reliably in the desert. And its dual guns gave commanders some tactical flexibility, at least in long-range engagements. But by late 1942, its time was almost up. The M for Sherman, lower, faster, with a fully rotating 75mm turret, was arriving on the scene. The M3 began to vanish from the front lines, often reassigned to training roles or foreign units. Yet the Lee didn't disappear quietly. In the jungles of Burma, the Indian Army and British units kept them in action well into 1944, where the terrain and enemy tanks were less threatening than in the desert. And in the Soviet Union, hundreds of M3 sent via Lend-Lease were thrown into the fight on the Eastern Front. The Red Army had little love for the tank, calling it the coffin for 7 brothers. But in desperate times, even a flawed tank could help hold a line. The M3 Lee was never elegant, never loved, but it filled a gap when it mattered. It taught hard lessons, it trained a new generation of American tank crews. And in its shadow, one of the most iconic tanks in history, the M for Sherman, was born. For a machine that looked like it belonged to a different era, still carved its place into the brutal steel story of World War II.